All right. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Garett Beukeboom. I'm part of the developer relations team at Research in Motion. I'm part of the cross-platform team, and what our team kind of specializes in are the types of services that are across the board, no matter what platform you're using to develop an application. So things like payment and push are kind of my specialties. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking about some of the methods that you can utilize in your application to make money. That goes a bit further than just selling the app and putting a price on the app to initially purchase it. So just show of hands, how many people watched Peter's session just before this one? Okay, so for you guys, this should be an easy sell. You've seen the numbers. You know that there's a lot of people in App World, a lot of people making purchases. I'm just going to kind of go through some of the steps that you can use to actually implement monetization strategies within your application. So just another show of hands, how many people have an app in App World that uses in-app payments today? One guy. Okay, all right. I'm not pandering to you too much. The rest of the crowd wins this one. So in today's session, we're going to talk about monetization, the licensing models that are supported for applications today in App World, in-app transactions, which is a huge one right now. So we'll spend a fair amount of time talking about that, and that's going to take up the bulk of the session. After that, we'll talk a bit about discoverability, because if your app can't be discovered, it doesn't matter how good of a job you do monetizing your app. No one's going to be able to make those purchases and end up making you money on your applications. So there's some upcoming changes in App World that you need to be aware of that will really help with this discoverability issue. Also, talk about some ways you can increase your discoverability of your application. Okay, so as far as licensing models go, the two main ones, we've got paid and free. And these aren't overly interesting. They're good. They're great to use. If you've got a paid application in App World, you get immediate return on investment. As soon as someone purchases it, that money goes into your bank. It's great, but the problem is getting the user to go out and purchase the application if it's not a major brand, if it's not something that people already know about. So basically, if it's not already popular, it's difficult to kind of get that across that they need to pay for this app to download it originally. On the other hand, you've got free applications. So these are the applications that users can download for free, and you can kind of make money either through advertising or through some in-app payments, and we'll get into that a bit more later once we talk about some in-app payments in particular. And then we have the subscription model. So this model can be applied at either the app level. So when you go into the vendor portal, when you go to upload your application, you get to pick a licensing model for your application. So there is the option within vendor portal to go in there and say, okay, it's a subscription application, and you can set all these values. Now, the reason why I'm explaining that is because you can also use this subscription model using our in-app payment SDKs. And that's really the way that we're trying to push everyone to go forward with this. Using App World is great. They go to download the app from App World, and App World kind of handles the subscriptions. But with in-app payments, if you use that to handle the subscriptions, it really gives you as a developer a lot more control over the subscription model. You can prompt the user for the subscription, and it gives them a familiar interface for purchasing. It also gives you the ability to query, which you're going to need to do anyways, regardless of where you do it. So this really just gives you a lot more power. It's already integrated with the App World service. So really in-app is the way to go forward. But like I said, if you do subscriptions through the vendor portal, those will be supported going forward as well. So with the subscription, basically what you do is you can set a recurring time intervals where the user will automatically be charged. So this, the prompt for all this is all handled by App World, so it's all legal. But basically what happens is you set either a 7 or 30-day interval for which the user will get charged. And then you also set an initial price point. So if you want, for say, the first 7 days of using the application to be completely free, and then after that you want to start the 7-day subscription trials, or 7-day payments, that can work. As well, you can even have a lower introductory price and then have the price go higher after 7 days. So that model is entirely up to you, and the user is made completely aware of it, so it's completely transparent to anyone using your application. Freemium is really kind of, this is a concept that's picked up a lot over the past few years, especially with mobile. Basically, users download the application for free, users use the application for free, So all in total, it's a free application. It's a good application, a premium application, and it has premium paid upgrades. So basically what happens is the user downloads this free application. They can use it, they like it, they get attached to the application, and then you offer little add-on packages that they can purchase to enhance their experience. And Peter kind of touched down on this, but you could do sort of things like unlock levels. So if you have an application that has 10 levels, once the user gets to the end, you can offer them the ability to buy another 5 levels, another 10 levels. The user already knows your application. So if it's a good application, you've got great sticking points here, really draw people in and kind of push the sale of the application. So you're essentially giving your app away for free as almost like an advertisement. You're advertising the rest of the application, the rest of the services. You also have saves you having to have 2 different applications in the App Store. A lot of people will put 2 apps in the App Store. They'll have a full version and a light version, which is great in some circumstances. You know, it gives the user, they can download the light version, they know it's light, and then if they want, they can upgrade to the paid version, which might be the full version, have a lot more levels. There are a few caveats to that. One of the major ones, with BlackBerry 10, all of your data for your application is going to get stored in its own sandbox. So say you complete the first 10 levels and you have to purchase the premium version of the application in order to get the remaining 20 levels, your save data isn't going to copy over automatically. There are ways to handle that, but it's not going to happen automatically. If you do freemium, where instead of having a separate SKU, you actually have one SKU and just have an integrated payment option to unlock the full application, all of the users' data. So the first 10 levels that they've completed, all of the items they may have collected in the game will automatically be carried on over to the full version of the game. So I don't normally put stats or anything in my presentations, but this came out just last week. So it's a report by Gartner that's basically solidifies that freemium is one of the major ways going forward in application monetization. So they say using an in-app purchase business model is a more effective method of converting casual app users into paying customers and then retaining them with good user experience and continued product updates. So if you get the users engaged in your application, it's a good application, they already have the quality there, they're more likely to continue using it and pay for more features after they've been involved with your application. And also one of the numbers that I find is really huge is that by 2016, they estimate that 41% of store revenues will be made up by in-app purchases, which is huge. And one of the numbers I didn't put up here is that they also estimated that by 2016, there'd be over 94% of applications would be completely free to download. So that's huge. If you're trying to get your application noticed and you've got a paid application, meanwhile someone that has maybe not as good of an application that is free, chances are the user will at least start with the free one to see how it works before moving on to the paid one. So this kind of gives you the best of both worlds and helps you get a larger user base quicker. So one of the applications that I really like that's been out pretty much since the time that Playbook came out was a game called Running Crowd. It's very, very simple. Basically, it's a game where you run in a crowd of other characters that look exactly like you. It's very, very simple, very fun, very addictive. It gives you like good 5-10 minutes. Well, actually, if you could play for 10 minutes, you'll probably break the world record because it gets very difficult. You're basically just this character, you tap on the screen and jump over pits, and the scene moves faster every second. And all these characters you're playing against are actually other players in the world. The big problem with this is that it gets a little confusing. As you can see on the right-hand screenshot, every other character looks exactly like you. So it gets confusing. You can get like 1,000 meters, which is pretty far, into the application and fall down a pit because you thought you were another character. So the creators of this game did something really clever. They said, okay, well, we're going to make all the characters look exactly the same, and then what we're going to do is we're going to sell outfits. So really, as soon as you're the only guy wearing a Trojan hat, you're going to stand right out. You're going to know exactly who you are, and it'll let you get further in the game. And it's a really clever strategy, very simple. It doesn't take a lot to implement this sort of strategy, and they even give you an option to buy all the outfits for a reduced price as a special. So instead of being in a crowd of people that look exactly the same, you automatically stand out. Very, very simple, just add a few graphics, and you can sell these within your application. Okay, so I've talked about kind of the models. Now we're going to talk about how we can actually implement these. And just so everyone knows, I'm kind of a Cascades promoter. I love Cascades as a development platform. There are other reasons, but I'm going to be talking about the supported platforms. The reason why I'm going to be talking about Cascades more than the other ones is that the other platforms haven't changed the way that they implement in-app payments. Cascades is new for BlackBerry 10, and the payment SDK has actually changed a bit in this latest release that just came out today. So I'm going to be talking about the methods for that. The other application systems use the same payment systems they did in either Playbook or in earlier BlackBerry 10 releases. So those already have sample applications out, and the only new one would be Cascades. So for each of these platforms, there's one major class that you use to handle most of your monetization. So with Cascades, you've got your payment manager. With native, you've got the BPS event loop, which is how a lot of system events are handled. With Air, you've got your payment system APIs. And with Android, you have your market billing APIs. For those of you that don't know, we do support Android in-app payment APIs. Basically what happens is we map the item ID to use in your Android to a SKU in App World. So those can work and be converted over right out of the box. There's a few small caveats, but really it's pretty straightforward, and it gives you another avenue if you're porting your Android application over to sell digital goods right in your application. HTML5 and WebWorks, the new BlackBerry 10 implementation does have payment services coming soon, but they're not available just yet. Okay, so as a flow for using in-app payments, basically your application gets installed and launched. This could be the first time the user launches the app. This could be the second time. But one of the most important things you want to do is you want to check for existing purchases and subscriptions. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to do this. The user could have, got a new phone, a new BlackBerry 10 device. They could be upgrading from a different phone. There's lots of reasons. So they could have existing purchases that your application doesn't necessarily know about, but you want to make sure that those get unlocked when the user first launches the app. When they make any purchases, you want to make sure you store those within your application. It'll speed up the boot up times, and you don't have to check with App World every time. And then basically you're just set to sell as much as you want within your application. So like I said, we're going to go through an example of Cascades, but a lot of these concepts are universal across the platform. So whether you're doing Cascades, Android, Air, it's going to be very similar for you. All right, so before we get started too deep into it, there are 3 different types of digital goods that you need to know about. First of all, they're static. So these are types of things that will not go away in your application. So say, for example, you have a petting zoo application. If you buy a goat, you don't want the goat to disappear and be used up. The goat would just be kind of one of those things that's sitting in your application, is always there. Then you have items that are consumable. So for example, if you have customers that want to feed the goats, they might buy grain, and then that's used up. As soon as the goat eats it, it's gone. The food's gone, so those are consumable. And the neat thing about consumables is that you can have one SKU in App World, and you can say, this one's grain, this one's oats, and from the application, you can actually define what each of those is. You can have one SKU and then say, okay, that's at 99 cents per purchase. But when you make the payment request, you can actually give the title of that object and an image for that object, so it can actually change around. So you can have one SKU in App World, but really to the end user, it's grain and oats, and it looks completely different. And then finally, we have the subscription model. So if you have, say, a newsstand application that you want to subscribe to certain magazines, you can have digital goods that follow the subscription mechanism. So certain digital goods, or even you can use one digital good that represents the subscription model for your entire application, can use the subscription model to sell digital goods as well. All right, so step 1, if you're making a purchase, the first thing you want to do is check the price of the purchase. As Peter was saying, different markets are going to have different pricing points. So you put something in App World for 99 cents. So in Canada, it's 99 cents. In the US, it might be 99 cents. But in other regions, such as Latin America, Indonesia, it might be a lower price point. So we give you the option, the ability to query App World for the price of your specific SKU, so that you can kind of dynamically populate those within your application. So in this case, we start with the price reply. We've got our payment manager. So again, this is what's going to be handling all of our interactions with App World, all of our in-app purchases. And we're just going to do simply a request price, and we're going to pass in the item ID and the SKU. So for those of you who aren't familiar with payment service, when you put in a digital good or even an application up in App World, you define an ID for that, and a SKU gets generated automatically, which uniquely identifies that digital good or that application. So if you're moving over from another system, you want to keep the IDs the same, you can kind of copy those over and define them yourself. But then App World will define its own SKU to keep everything unique. So you can specify one or the other in this case. So yeah, if the digital ID is empty, then it's going to use the SKU instead. And the SKU is the digital SKU given by the App World. All right, so we have a really good question that someone came up with the crowd. Is the ID for a digital good unique to a specific application, or can be used across applications? Basically, in the vendor portal, when you define an application, you'll define digital goods, and those digital goods will be unique to that specific application. So you can't purchase digital goods from another application in your application. Yes, yeah. So you can use. The question was, can you use the same digital ID? And you definitely can. That's not a problem, and you shouldn't have any conflict because, like I said, it is unique to your application. Okay, so then if you wanted to make the purchase, you check the price, the user wants to make the purchase. Basically, you just do request purchase. You pass in the ID and the SKU just like you normally would, but then you also have a few other parameters such as the name. So if you are doing a consumable digital good, you can specify the name for it, and then this is when the user gets the prompt that says, hey, would you like to purchase this? You can actually specify the name dynamically so that it displays something differently when, depending on when the user's purchasing it. And the metadata, if you have any sort of extra information that you want to include with the digital good purchase, you can include that there, and that will kind of give a bit more information back when you query what digital goods were purchased. Selling subscription is very, very similar. So the first thing you want to do is check the subscription terms. So we had, for making a purchase, we have checking the price. For subscriptions, we check the subscription terms. Subscription terms are going to include things like the initial price, the renewal price, and the renewal period. So all this is defined in the vendor portal, and when you make the query, it queries that and pulls it down and displays it to you by throwing it into a subscription terms reply. And then step 2 for a subscription is to make the purchase. And I'll refer you back a few slides to make the purchase for a digital good because it's the exact same method. You just invoke it with the ID, the SKU, and the purchase is presented to the user in the exact same way. So subscription or digital good, they both get sold the same way. And then, of course, if you are selling a subscription, like I said, it does have regular intervals where it will charge the user after 7 days, every 7 days, or every 30 days. So you really want to implement a way to cancel subscription within your application. It's really important. It gives the user a way to get out of the subscription and make sure that they don't get charged again if they're not going to be using the application anymore. So one of the important things to do that I talked about is to check for existing purchases when they first fire up the application. So there are 2 ways you can do this. Well, actually 3 ways. The 2 ways you can do it when interacting with App World. The first one is to query App World's cache. So the App World client on the device will actually cache some of the digital purchases that happen and come through. So if you do a query of the cache of App World, so basically we've got our query at the bottom there, payment manager, request existing purchases, and we're passing in a Boolean whether we want to force a refresh from the server or not. So if we say false here, it'll check the App World cache and say, hey, do you have anything cached that have been purchased recently? If it does, it'll pass that back to your application. Now, if this is empty, then it doesn't necessarily mean that there have been no purchases. The user could have gotten the device for the first time, went into My World, downloaded an application they previously had digital goods previously purchased. So what you can do is put in true in there, which is a good step to do if the first one returns, if pulling from the cache returns nothing, you put in true there, and then it will then actually query the App World servers, check the database, and check for, based on your BlackBerry ID, what digital goods you've purchased for this particular application. Okay. Same thing for checking for existing subscriptions is the exact same thing. If you check from the cache, it could be empty even though there is an existing subscription. So it's really important, again, that you just request existing purchases. The existing purchases will return digital goods as well as subscriptions. And then there are methods in the existing purchases reply that will let you determine whether it was a subscription or it was a digital good. Now, there's also a really simple API if you want to just check the status of a subscription and you don't need all that extra information. It saves you a couple of calls. All you do is make a call to request subscription status, pass in the ID and or the SKU, and that will return back with a reply, and the reply basically just has one field, which is active, and it'll either be true or false. So if it's false, you know they don't have a subscription and they don't have that purchased. So the purchase receipt that comes back, whether you're querying existing purchases for a subscription or digital good, you'll have the purchase status, so whether it's owned or refunded, subscription status, so you'll have the start date, the end date, as well as whether or not the user subscribed, and then you'll have the digital good info. So you'll have the SKU, the metadata if you included any of that in your initial purchase, the purchase ID, and the license key. So if you generate license keys for your digital goods, those will get presented back to you in this call. And that's in the, for Cascades, it's in the BB platform purchase receipt object. That's what's going to have all these fields defined. Now, if you're going to store your purchases, the sample application that I'm going to show you that should be available, or a similar sample application, does not actually store the digital good purchases. So this is a good idea if you're going to, if it's a long application, you want to store level settings, anything of the sorts, you want to make sure you store that information persistently on the device. So if they restart the device, you don't have to keep on querying App World every time the device boots up. It only takes a few seconds, but those few seconds really add to the lag of the startup of the app. So in this case, I'm actually just going to refer you to this Starship settings application, which is a Cascade sample, which shows how you can very simply save key value pairs to the system memory. It's very simple to use. It does require you doing a bit of C++, but again, if you just store the SKU or the ID and a bit more information, you can very easily save those purchases and then recall them next time your application starts up, and it'll be very quick and responsive and keep the user happy. And most importantly, it'll keep them spending more time actually in your application than trying to wait for App World to come back with your purchases. All right, so after you've got all of your purchases implemented, there are three different testing steps you can do. There's local mode testing, there is what's known as sandbox testing, and then full live testing. So for local mode testing, basically what we do is we set, on our payment manager, we're gonna set the connection mode to test. And what this does is it makes it so that whenever we do a purchase, we get this prompt that you see on the right-hand side. And that lets us determine what we want the response to come back. So we're basically pretending that we're making a call to App World, and we're setting what sort of response we want to get back. So this response, right now we've got the response set to success, will be the exact same response that we would receive from App World if it were a success, if the purchase ID were 1, and there were no license key or anything. So it gives you a bit of flexibility. You can actually change it to be a subscription instead of a object, because we're not querying App World. This is all just kind of ad hoc, so you can kind of change it around and play with the results as they come back. So another important thing to note, there's no valid transaction IDs for these purchases. So if you try and query based on the transaction ID or see what existing purchases exist, and you've made purchases in test mode, but you're trying to test in a production app, those values aren't going to come back. So these are all just basically spoofed, and they go away once your application restarts. But it is good for testing handling of responses in your application. You can kind of make sure your framework is all there, everything's working fine, and that your application is handling the events, either success or errors, and displaying the appropriate information to the end user. All right, so sandbox testing. After you move out of local testing, the next step is to upload your application to App World, start putting your digital goods in there, and then download your application for testing. So from Playbook and BlackBerry Java devices, sandbox testing was available. There's been a bit of a change for BlackBerry 10. They're working on a different system apart from sandbox where you can actually test your application. So for now, in-app payments from the sandbox won't work for you until that new system comes out, but if you stay tuned, as soon as that comes out, we'll have a blog post put up. But for now, this can still let you download a version of your application before it goes production. So you can test downloading it and playing around with it just like you would from App World. So to do this, you log into your vendor portal, you add a new user, and you use the BlackBerry ID that the user is using on their device. And then from there, the right screenshot is actually the App World that you all have or will have in your Dev Alpha. And it has a mode where basically all you do is you go into development mode, you put in the SKU of your item, and you can then download it even though it's not visible from App World. And then finally, the last step of testing, if you want to be extremely thorough, which is always a good idea, is real dollar testing. So basically you upload the app, you get it approved through App World, you download it, and you make legitimate purchases. So again, this isn't going to work right now. Once the new version of App World comes out, or we'll get a few updates, we will have the ability to do full live testing within App World. Okay, so you made your digital purchases, you made your app. Whether you're doing either a paid application, a free application, if you have existing applications in the marketplace, it's really important to have a good grasp on SKU management. So this is all information that would be, or all the SKUs, all of your applications and digital goods all have a SKU, and they're all stored within App World. So who does this affect? There are some major changes coming out. So if you have an existing BlackBerry smartphone or Playbook application in App World today, and you're planning on releasing a BlackBerry 10 version of this application, this section is really important to you as well. If you're going to be targeting multiple aspect ratios of devices, there are going to be a few coming out, or multiple languages. As Peter was talking about, there are many, many different regions that App World is supported in, many languages supported on the device. So if you want to localize your application, really monopolize on the different languages that are supported, then this is, again, another important section for you to pay attention to. So in the current vendor portal, you're allowed to have one set of images and one description per application. It's good for some situations. So if you're going to target a single locale with your application, if you're only targeting one set of devices, so if you're targeting BlackBerry Java only or Playbook only or BlackBerry 10 only, then that might work for you, or a single form factor. But it's not great for other situations. So if you want to target multiple locales, right now there's no fantastic solution in place for that. But this is kind of some of the points that we're going to be targeting with the App World update that's coming in the coming months. So with the new improved Relevance SKU management system that's coming out, the goal is to basically let you have one SKU for your entire application. So basically what this is going to let you do is use targeted metadata so that you can have one application, but the product name can actually be changed and be specific, language specific. So you can have your product name in English. So when people are using English as a language in App World and they search for, petting zoo, that comes up. If they're in French and they want to search whatever petting zoo is in French, the title will still come up and they'll be able to see it. So it improves discoverability of your application in that respect. As well, right now you can have product descriptions in multiple languages. But if you have a Java application, a BlackBerry Java application, a tablet application, and a BlackBerry 10 application, all of those are currently going to have the exact same description. So you can localize them, but regardless of what happens, every application, so if you browse in App World and all those three devices, they're all going to have the exact same description, which may not be the best thing because you might be targeting different things with different applications, different functionalities available on different platforms. So what this is going to let you do is have a different description on every different platform. So you can make sure that it's very relevant and very specific to the platform that you're targeting. As well, for screenshots, if you've got a BlackBerry Java application, chances are it's not going to look the same as an application on the Playbook, and it's not going to look the same as an application on BlackBerry 10. So this basically lets you separate out the screenshots and provide different screenshots for the different platforms so that it's relevant when the user searches it in App World. And even for BlackBerry 10 smartphone, like I said, we're going to have a few different aspect ratios. So you're actually going to be able to upload screenshots that are going to fit different aspect ratios. So when that 720 by 720 resolution BlackBerry smartphone comes out, the user browses it, they're going to see a screenshot that's 720 by 720. When they use the 1280 by 720 BlackBerry smartphone, you can have a screenshot that's 1280 by 720 and really give the user a feel for how your application is going to look on their particular device. So in the end, it's going to separate into 3 key categories. BlackBerry OS, so that's the devices running OS 7.1 and below, BlackBerry Playbook, and then BlackBerry 10 smartphones. And like I said, for BlackBerry 10 smartphones, we're even going to split it up into aspect ratios so that you can have even more granularity over your what's displayed to the end user. Okay, so it's all great and good. You've got all this this single SKU management. Sounds like a really good idea, but how does it really help? One of the major things is that it's going to make your application so much more discoverable. So if you're doing any sort of BBM, BlackBerry Messenger integration, which is available in BlackBerry Java for smartphones, one of the main sticking points for that is the application, you can't have 2 different SKUs talk to each other. So you need to have your applications have the same SKU in order for a BlackBerry Messenger integration on a smartphone, a Java smartphone to talk to a BlackBerry 10 smartphone. So that's going to open up that path of communication and make your application more discoverable. Let users that are using your application in BlackBerry smartphones talk to BlackBerry 10 smartphones. As well for social networks, if you're trying to promote your application, you only have to point users to one single URL. They'll be able to find it within App World and get there automatically. And then app upgrade paths is another big one. If the user has their smartphone, the BlackBerry Java smartphone, they upgrade to a BlackBerry 10 smartphone, and your application is available in App World, it'd be nice if they could all of a sudden see a new app upgrade is available and they can just install your application and keep that existing user base. And then, of course, localized search results and screenshots. So if your screenshot does have any text in it, you can actually specify a localized screenshot so that it will be in Spanish for Spanish users, English for English users, and French for French users. So that if those users browse, they see the screenshot, they're going to be able to understand what's going on, which is another huge win for App World. Also, I already touched down on this a bit, but it's going to let you retain your original install base. So again, users switching from BlackBerry smartphones to tablets to BlackBerry 10, if they've already got your application installed on one, they'll be able to see it in My World and should be able to download and install that as well. So they've already got it discovered. They already know about it. They already like your application. This just gives them another easy way to find the app and make sure they install it right away. And of course, manageability. It gives you a single set of digital goods. As someone from the audience brought up, the question of whether digital goods can be passed across applications. This just makes it one step easier. If you use the same SKU, you've got the same base of digital goods, and you don't have to worry about recreating digital goods for every single SKU you have up in App World because you only have one SKU. And of course, granular updates. So if you want to update your application specifically for one language, you realized you had a typo, or the translation machine you used to translate from English to Spanish did something wrong and it's not exactly understandable, you can do updates of specific digital goods and metadata without having to go through the process of updating everything, the entire application. So if we go through a few scenarios here, if you start off with a BlackBerry 10 SKU, and that's the only application you're uploading, you're starting off brand new with BlackBerry 10. It's not going to be, the first column's not, or the first row is not applicable because it's not available in My World yet. The user's just, so the scenario is basically the user's got BlackBerry 10 and they go into My World. The relevant product attributes are going to be displayed because you've only got one SKU. It's going to be social, and discovery isn't really a factor because you've only got it on one platform, so you can't talk across platforms with BBM. The relevant ratings are going to show to the prospective user because, again, you only have one SKU. And the screenshots are going to be relevant because you've only got one SKU, one application in App World. So the first column is basically you just started out just targeting BlackBerry 10. Second column, so say you've got an existing smartphone application out there and you add a BlackBerry 10 application to it. So with the current system, the customer will be able to see the application in My World. However, you may still want to charge them for that if you want to make money off the upgrade to BlackBerry 10. The relevant product attributes aren't going to be there because it's, you wrote up the description for BlackBerry Java, now they're BlackBerry 10. And it's not going to be, but it will be discoverable across BBM. Now the other three, the ratings and reviews are going to be the same across them. They're going to be carried over in the current system. But in the future, what's going to happen is those are going to be completely separated out. So if you've got an application that's in BlackBerry 10, it's going to have its own set of ratings that are going to be completely separate from the ratings of the previous version. And then you're going to be able to, currently you're not going to be able to have different descriptions either. You're going to have one description, so even if you add all these new features and take advantage of the Invoke framework and the social capabilities of BlackBerry 10, those won't reflect in the description because it'll either be misleading for the BlackBerry Java users or it'll be misleading for the BlackBerry 10 users. And then the screenshots as well, you've got to kind of pick. So, and the same sort of thing happens with BlackBerry 10. If you're adding a BlackBerry 10 application to an existing Playbook application SKU in App World, again, you can have the app available, visible in My World, depending on if the application is compatible with BlackBerry 10. The relevant product attributes aren't going to be there. BBM's social integration isn't available for playbooks. That's not a factor. And then the bottom three are the exact same as adding it to a BlackBerry Java application. So with the new system coming out, everything gets lit up. Everything becomes possible. If you've got a single SKU, everything is going to be available in My World. If it's available for your device, you're going to have the relevant product attributes because every platform is going to have its own images, description, and it's going to have the same title across all platforms. And the social discovery is going to work because you've only got one SKU, meaning that a BlackBerry Java application that has a BBM contact or has a communication field for BBM or integrates with BBM, will be able to integrate with the BBM implementation on BlackBerry 10 as well. And the relevant description is going to be shown to the prospective purchaser of your application, as well as relevant screenshots. So it's really important. This change is going to add a lot of usability and definitely make it easier for users to find your application, whether they've had it installed before or not. So this is coming in the next few months. It should be available prior to BlackBerry 10 launch. You're going to see changes as a vendor before the end users will in App World, but once all that changes are in there, you'll be ready to go. So you'll be able to get all your products ready so that when BlackBerry 10 launches, you've already got the single SKU management in place and ready for end users to upgrade. Okay, so just some more ideas on increasing discoverability. The first one, and just so you know, these are just plugs for other sessions. Not just plugs, but they're really good. So for viral distribution, BlackBerry Messenger is a huge viral distribution channel. I don't want to steal the thunder of this session that's coming up, but basically it really lets you add some premium features to your application pretty much free of charge. You can add all these BlackBerry Messenger contacts in there. BlackBerry Messenger is used by over 60 million users monthly. So if you've got that tied in there, then users can recommend the application, if it's good, to other users on their BBM list. You can post updates to BBM, you can add awards to BBM, and it really drives that social engagement and integrates nicely with the rest of the system. 70% of users use BBM daily, which is huge. So if everyone's using BBM daily, if one person has a status update and you see that on everyone else's BBM, it's a really good promotion for your application. And again, it's all social. People know if their friends are recommending applications, they're going to be more likely to use it. And one of the big things, 20% of App World downloads are BBM connected applications. So we've got 105,000 applications, and I don't have the exact stats here. The 20% of the downloads is a very small number of applications in App World. There aren't many applications that fully leverage BBM connectivity. So if you do leverage this, expect to see your numbers grow if you developed a good application. So if you want to find out more on these, tomorrow, Wednesday at 1 p.m., Jam 37 and Jam 49, there is a session on integrating with web apps. So if you're a WebWorks developer, HTML5, you can attend that session. If you are a native or Cascades developer, I strongly recommend you attend the lab, Jam 49. Again, they're both tomorrow at 1 p.m., but they target two very different developer bases. So pick whichever one is more important to you. Okay, again, I already talked a lot about this point. If you localize your application in assets, you're going to be able to reach it to a whole other group of people. application metadata can be localized within the vendor portal. There's no programming needed there. But if you want to actually internationalize your application, add locales so that all of the fields in your application change from English to French to Spanish, etc., then you want to make sure that your application is fully internationalized. So tomorrow at 2 p.m., there's an internationalization session where they're targeting both Cascades as well as WebWorks and really show you how to integrate that. So as soon as the user switches the language on their device, your application flips right over entirely so that it's entirely understandable and it's running in whatever language the end user would like the application to be run in. And then finally, one of the biggest things I think that's going to make a huge splash moving forward, the Built for BlackBerry program. So if your application becomes certified, Built for BlackBerry, you get a nice little promotion. It makes it easier to find. And the most important thing, it lets people know that you've made a quality application. So Wednesday, again, 1 p.m., that's a lot of sessions happening right tomorrow at the same time. Jam 44 will give you some more information on the Built for BlackBerry program and the $10,000 developer commitment that was recently announced, and we recently put the details up on. Okay, so I've got a quick demo that I'm going to show you. So if we could just switch over to the smartphone. All right, and it's great because a lot of people haven't seen in-app payments currently. So what I'm going to show, first of all, this is just a payment sample application that is written in Cascades, and it just shows the local mode testing. So anyone that has played with BlackBerry at all in the past might be familiar with local mode testing. Basically what we can do is we can check each of these items. And what we're doing is we're dynamically updating the price. We're retrieving that from the payment system. We're retrieving the $199 down at the bottom. So that's all being pulled in dynamically from our calls to the App World server. So in this case, because we are using local mode, it's all local checks. But then we also have the option to buy. And from here, we can actually change the response. So if we test success, we can evaluate all of the data we retrieve back. So this is all getting handled by signals and slots right in Cascades. And as a developer, it's a really good first check to make sure your payment system, your payment APIs are connected properly and that everything's getting handled as expected. So if we go to buy again, we can actually, not only can we say that it didn't work, we can also give reasons for why it didn't work. And again, those will be retrieved back from the system and displayed in our text area. All right. And again, this local mode testing, the user interface that you're seeing there, when the window comes up, that should be the same for no matter what system you're using, whether you're doing native, Android Air, Cascades, you're going to have the same UI shown to you when you're doing your testing. Some of the other things you can do, you can actually check the subscription terms for individual items. Again, these are all just spoofed results because we're doing local mode testing. But if we were doing live testing, you could actually pull these from App World and then check the status of a subscription. And then if we go to our different tabs, we can actually retrieve all the purchases that have been made to date. So in this case, we've got 2 different purchases that we made successfully, and we can list those out. So this is good. This will all just stay for the session. As soon as we close the application, all of these existing purchases get deleted because they're just being cached for this particular session. And then we have the option to cancel subscriptions just to make sure that they work as well. All right, so it's pretty simple sample, but it just shows some of the basics of checking systems, and it shows you really how to connect those signals and slots. As well, another thing that this sample does, which is really cool, is that it takes all these C++ APIs, and I don't know about you guys, I'm not overly familiar with C++. I really like the whole QML implementation of Cascades, and if no one knows what I'm talking about right now, we got some great Cascade sessions going on over these 3 days. But QML is all declarative. It's very easy to use, whether you're a programmer or just just getting into development. But basically, you can register all these APIs with that, so you can make all the calls using using JavaScript basically, instead of doing C++. All right, the next thing I want to show you is App World. So if we go into App World, we basically have our mock-up of App World right now. At the moment, like I said, purchasing is not available, but I just want to show you quickly how to get into development mode. So if you want to test downloading your application before it goes public, just basically go to the Settings tab, Oh, sorry, just a sec.
You have to go to development mode through the
Oh, it's got to be enabled there first. Okay, my bad. Thanks. Okay. I just rebooted the device, so development mode got toggled off outside of the device. But for testing applications, you need to have your device in development mode. And that also changes the way it works in App World, which is kind of cool. Okay. Settings, and now we got development mode item. Thanks. So basically what we do is you upload your application. Before it goes public, it has to go through a review process. And it's not the longest review process, but chances are you're going to want to test your application out, give it one last test before it actually goes over to review to make sure that you didn't upload a bad version, or you want to test your in-app purchases or whatever. So what you do here is you put in the SKU of your application that you give them when you upload it, and this will give you the ability to download the application to your device. It won't show up in My World, but it'll let you test it out and give it one last test. So basically all you do is you put your SKU number in, or your content ID, and if your application, or if your BlackBerry ID has been added to the Sandbox users account in App World, you'll be able to download the application. This also kind of gives you a way, if you want to let other people test your application without purchasing it, you can give it to them and let them download from your account and kind of give you some feedback on how it works. You basically just add their BlackBerry ID to the Sandbox account, you give them their SKU, and they're able to download and install your application. All right, and we're good to go back to the slideshow, please. Thanks. All right, so if anyone has any questions, we are getting pretty close to the end of my allotted time, but I have one-on-ones that people can sign up for in Hall 1 starting at 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock I'll be in there from 6 till 7 just hanging around if anyone has any additional questions. And again, if anyone has any feedback or wants to send any information about this session, just fire it off to Twitter at BlackBerryDev. Use the hashtag BBJam and the hashtag Jam51. If anyone has any questions right now, though, sorry, and then don't forget, anyone watching Peter's session, just these kind of throw me off. So you can download the BlackBerry Jam America's Mobile Conference Guide, give you information about what's going on in the remaining portion of the conference. You can download that from App World today. There is an appreciation event tonight at 7 p.m. It's right across the street at the Tech Museum. And if you haven't done so already, give us your reasons to believe at the 10K Reasons to Believe booth at the Jam Space. Basically, it's a video spot. You can just go there and talk for however long, just talking about why you believe in BlackBerry and why you'll be developing for BlackBerry moving forward. If you need any more information, developer.blackberry.com/services has all our platform services across the board, not just payment. And developer.blackberry.com/AppWorld will give you all the information you need to get started if you want to create an App World account, find out more information about App World, how it works. And they've also got some great infographics on the how much money you can make on App World and what sort of downloads we're seeing for the different platforms. So if you do have any questions, please just come to the mic. We've got about 10 minutes, and then I'll be over in Hall 1. Thanks.
You mentioned about the subscription model that you said you recommend, and you could do the 7-day free and then convert over, say. So my question is, who keeps track of if you set it up for 7 days free, and then after the 7 days they haven't purchased it? What prevents the customer from downloading it again for another 7 days of free? Is it us with our coding or you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're worried if the user ends up downloading the application themselves. So they use it for the first 7 days for free, then they delete it, then they re-download it and use it again. You can use some sort of licensing model in your application. If you have your own server set up, you can kind of send off some information, some metadata that they've downloaded it, and then verify that when it comes back.
Okay, so we need to do that.
Yeah, it'll be implemented. Maybe the product guys can keep me honest on this. I'm not sure if I don't think that there's anything built in today that will actually track that if they've re-downloaded the application a second time.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that fact, but like if when you do sign up for the trial, you're basically signing up for the subscription. So unless they cancel the subscription,
Okay.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's a great one too. So yeah, and if you do that, if you have if the subscription exists, it means you can query the existing or even previous subscriptions and see if they've decided to do the 7 days and cancel. If they reinstall the application, you can query the payment system, see that they did have a previous subscription, and then charge them right away. So that's another reason why it'd be good, if you do it all in-app, it gives you a lot more control over that too.
Okay. And then the last question is, if they download it for free, can they write a review, or only paid people can write reviews?
Anyone can write a review of the application.
Oh.
So if they have it in My World, they're given the ability to write a review for the app. So that's, again, one of the main reasons why even a freemium application, making it very usable, very user-friendly, and not putting in kind of roadblocks that would frustrate people is really important. So it's really important to always give a good user experience, whether it's free or paid. Okay, thank you.
Currently, the screenshots are limited to 640 by 640. With the new sizes, will they allow you to do both landscape and portrait selections? Because obviously, the playbook, some applications are only portrait, some are landscape. Some of ours do both, but we might want to show both all in the same different set of screenshots.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Again, yes. Yes, I'm getting a yes from the back, so yes, you'll be able to.
Okay, good, thank you. Also, will it be higher definition than 640 by 640? Great.
All right, so the other question that you might not have caught on if you're watching this, will higher definition than 640 by 640 be supported? And the answer is yes.
At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned that in the upcoming OS, due to sandboxing, upgrading from light to paid, the paid version would not be able to access data that might have been created when the user used the light version. My question is, if the application stores data on the SD card, would that still be the case, or if?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So the question is, if the application, well, I guess everyone, sorry, heard the question. Yeah, that would definitely work. That's one option that you do have available to you. If you want to store that data on the SD card, you can read that back in. The sandbox only really refers to the application, so the payment system will be, any previous purchases will be tied to that one application, so that one sandbox. So if you try and query existing purchases and you're only querying the App World servers, if you're using a different version of the application, those purchases won't come back. Now, if you have your own sort of querying and storing mechanism, then that works fine. One of the problems, though, is if the user, they get rid of this device or their SD card becomes corrupt, you need to make sure, it'd be nice to have those purchases or those, the game stats saved so that they can, when they move forward, it's retrievable as well.
I had one more question. I mean, in one of the slides you showed that regarding ratings and reviews for any new binaries added for the BBX platform. My question is, if we already have an existing application available for both the legacy BlackBerry phones and the BlackBerry Playbook, once we add the binary for BBX, when somebody looks at the application on their BBX phones, would they see the ratings and reviews that were added for the legacy phones and the Playbook?
So with the system moving forward, they will be separated out, the reviews, so they'll only be relevant to the one application. And there's a ton of reasons for why that is. If people say, oh, I really like this feature of the application, and then someone downloads the application, that feature doesn't exist in the BlackBerry 10 version, or it changed a little bit, it can cause confusion. But if you have a good application for BlackBerry Java or the Playbook, and you want the same version available, chances are it's already going to have a good user base, and that same user base is going to be able to see it in My World, and that same user base is going to be able to download it. And if it is differentiated, you take advantage of all the BlackBerry 10 features, it wouldn't be crazy to expect that a lot of people would add another review and say that they really like it as well. So it is going to be separated out, so they're relevant. But like I said, with the single SKU, there's so many benefits, like allowing people to re-download the application for BlackBerry 10. That shouldn't be a problem.
My question is in terms of, so if a new user adds a rating or a review for the BBX phone, if anyone is using the application on legacy phones or Playbook, would they see the reviews? So is it that the reviews and ratings are specific to a device type?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So they'll be specific. They'll be specific to the platform. So BlackBerry 10 users will only see BlackBerry 10 reviews. BlackBerry Java users will only see BlackBerry Java reviews. But I believe if you go to the web, all the reviews will get displayed for the application? Yeah, okay.
And when you see a device type, it means that is BBX devices a device type, or different curve is a separate device type? And
So right now, the three different categories are the BlackBerry Java phone, so anything running BlackBerry OS 7.1 and below. The BlackBerry Playbook will be its own device type, and then BlackBerry 10 smartphones, so any variant of BlackBerry 10 smartphones will be its own device type as well.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right, thank you.
Is the price point tied to the SKU, or can you have different price points based on the device?
You can have different price points based on the device. That's a really good question, and something that I forgot to mention. So say you go through all this work, you've got a tablet or BlackBerry Playbook application, or you got a BlackBerry Java application. You go through all this work to make a BlackBerry 10 application, and it's a paid application. Someone may have already purchased it for BlackBerry Java, but you still want to get some revenue for people installing it on BlackBerry 10. You can't actually set its own price point so that users have to pay in order to upgrade to the BlackBerry 10 version when they get a BlackBerry 10 phone. But it'll still show up in their My World as an application that they've had previously. Sorry. Yeah, it's there's just a lot of changes coming out, so I just like to make sure that the product guys are all with me on it. All right, so that's about the end of my session. Like I said, I'll be in Hall 1 in about a half hour for the following 2 hours if anyone has any questions or would like to sign up for a one-on-one. But yeah, if nothing else, thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you for the rest of the session.